Just a fringe group. Nobody listens to them. The fringe usually works its way to the center that ignores or insults it. What? Rosanna spluttered. That's true, Lynn, Rish agreed, and they've done some violent stuff. No doubt. But they're mainly in the regional centers and the villages. Beating up priests, and burning down a church here and there, that's their thing. They'll never get a big following in Bombay. Vicious fucking fanatics. A bearded young man wearing a pink shirt spat out viciously. They're the stupidest people in the world. I don't think you can say that, I said softly. I just did, the young man shot back. So fuck you. I just said it, so I can say it. Okay, I meant that you can't say it with any validity. Sure, you can say it. You can say that the moon is a Diwali decoration, but it wouldn't have any validity. It's simply not valid to say that all the people who oppose you are stupid. Then what are they? Rish asked. I think you probably know them and their way of thinking better than I do. No, really, make your point, please. Okay, I think they're devout. And not just devout, but fervently devout. I think they're in love with God, infatuated with God, actually, and when their God is depicted without faith, it's felt as an insult to the faith inside themselves. So, you're saying I shouldn't have been allowed to put on this show? Rish pressed. I didn't say that. Who the fuck is this guy? The bearded youth asked no one. Please, Rish continued, tell me what you did say. I stand for your right to create and present art, but I think that rights come with responsibilities, and that we, as artists, have a responsibility not to cause feelings of hurt and injury in the name of art. In the name of truth, maybe. In the name of justice and freedom. But not in the name of art. Why not? We stand on tall shoulders when we express ourselves as artists, and we have to stay true to the best in the artists who came before us. It's a duty. Who the fuck is this guy? The bearded youth asked the string of red motorcycle lights. So, if those people are offended, it's my fault? Rish asked softly and earnestly. I was beginning to like him. I repeat, the bearded youth demanded, who the fuck is this guy? I already didn't like the bearded youth. I'm the guy who's gonna rearrange your grammar, I said quietly, if you address me in the third person again. He's a writer, Anushka yawned. They argue, because they can, Lisa interjected, tugging at my arm to lift me to my feet. Come on, Lynn. Time to dance. Loud music thumped from heavy floor-mounted speakers. I love this song, Anushka growled, jumping up and pulling Rish to his feet. Dance with me, Rish. I held Lisa for a moment and kissed her neck. Go ahead, I smiled. Dance your brains out. I'm gonna take another look at the exhibition. I'll meet you outside. Lisa kissed me and joined the dancing crowd. I moved through the dancers, resisting the tidal roll of the music. In the gallery room I stood before the bronze plaster reliefs that purported to tell the story of the Sapna killings. I tried to decide whether it was the artist's nightmare or mine. I lost it all. I lost the custody of my daughter. I sleepwalked into heroin addiction and armed robbery. When I was caught, I was sentenced to serve 10 years at hard labor in a maximum security prison. I could tell you I was beaten during the first 2.5 years of that sentence. I could give you half a dozen other sane reasons for escaping from an insane prison, but the truth of it's simply that one day, freedom was more important to me than my life. And I refused, that day, to be caged. Not today. Not anymore. I escaped, and became a wanted man. The fugitive life took me from Australia, through New Zealand, to India. 6 months in a remote village in Maharashtra gave me the language of farmers. 18 months in a city slum gave me the language of the street. I went to prison again, in Bombay, as you do sometimes, when you're on the run. The man who paid my freedom ransom to the authorities was a mafia boss, Khaderbai. He had a use for me. He had a use for everyone. And when I worked for him, no cop persecuted me in Bombay, and no prison offered hospitality. Counterfeiting passports, smuggling, black market gold, illegal currency trading, protection rackets, gang wars, Afghanistan, vendettas. One way or another, the mafia life filled the months and years. And none of it mattered much to me, because the bridge to the past, to my family and friends, to my name and my nation and whatever I'd been before Bombay was gone, like the dead men prowling through Rosanna's bronze-colored frieze. I left the gallery, made my way through the thinning crowd, and went outside to sit on my motorcycle. I was across the street from the entrance. A crowd of people had gathered on the footpath, near my bike. Most of them were local people from servants' quarters in the surrounding streets. They'd gathered in the cool nightfall to admire the fine cars and elegantly dressed guests entering and leaving the exhibition. I heard people speaking in Marathi and Hindi. They commented on the cars and jewelry and dresses with genuine admiration and pleasure. No voice spoke with jealousy or resentment. They were poor people, living the hard, fear-streaked life crushed into the little word poor, but they admired the jewels and silks of the rich guests with joyful, unenvious innocence. When a well-known industrialist and his movie star wife emerged from the gallery, a little chorus of admiring sighs rose from the group. She wore a bejeweled yellow and white sari. I turned my head to look at the people, smiling and murmuring their appreciation, as if the woman were one of their own neighbors, and I noticed 3 men standing apart from the group. Their stone-silent stares were grim. Malevolence rippled outward from their dark, staring eyes. Waves so intense that it seemed I could feel them settle on my skin, like misted rain. And then, as if they sensed my awareness of them, they turned as one and stared directly into my eyes, with clear, unreasoning hatred. We held the stare, while the happy crowd cooed and murmured their pleasure, while limousines drew up in front of us, and cameras flashed. I thought of Lisa, still inside the gallery. The men stared, willing darkness at me. My hands moved slowly toward the 2 knives fixed in canvas scabbards in the small of my back. "Hey," Rosanna said, slapping me on the shoulder. Reflex sent my hand whipping around to grab her wrist, while the other hand shoved her backwards a step. "Whoa, take it easy," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. "I'm sorry." I frowned, releasing her wrist. I turned quickly to search for the hate-filled eyes. The 3 men were gone. "Are you okay?" Rosanna asked. "Sure," I said, turning to face her again. "Sure. Sorry. Is it about done in there?" "Just about," she said. "When the big stars leave, the lights go out. Lisa says you're not a Goa fan." "Why not? I'm from there, you know." I guessed. "So, what have you got against Goa?" "Nothing. It's just that every time I go there, somebody asks me to pick up their dirty laundry." "That's not my Goa," she countered. It wasn't defensive. It was simply a statement of fact. "Maybe not," I smiled. "And Goa's a big place. I only know a couple of beaches and towns." She was studying my face. "What did you say it was?" she asked. "Rubies and what?" "Rubies and love letters. But you weren't in Goa just for that, were you?" "Sure," I lied. "If I said you were down there for black market business, would I be close to the mark?" I'd gone to Goa to collect 10 handguns. I'd dropped them off with my mafia contact in Bombay, before searching for Vikram to return the necklace. Black market business was close to the mark. "Look, Rosanna, has it occurred to you that you're the problem here? People like you, who come to India and bring trouble we don't need. There was a lot of trouble here before I came, and there'll be plenty left when I'm gone. We're talking about you, not India." She was right. The 2 knives pressing against the small of my back made the point. "You're right," I conceded. "I am? Yeah, I'm trouble, all right? And so are you, at the moment, if you don't mind me saying it." "Lisa doesn't need trouble from you," she said, frowning hard. "No," I said evenly. "Nobody needs trouble." She studied my face a little longer, her brown eyes searching for something wide enough or deep enough to give the conversation a context. Finally she laughed and looked away, running a ringed hand through her spiked hair. "How many days does the show run?" I asked. "We're supposed to have another week of this," she remarked, looking at the last guests leaving the exhibition. "If the crazies don't close us down, that is. If I were you, I'd pay for some security. I'd put a couple of big, sharp guys on the door. Moonlight a few guys from one of the 5-star hotels. They're pretty good, some of those guys, and the ones who aren't still look good enough." "You know something about the show?" "Not really. I saw some men out here before. Seriously unhappy men. I think they're seriously unhappy with your show." "I hate those fucking fanatics," she hissed. "I think it's mutual." I glanced toward the gallery to see Lisa kissing Rish and Taj goodbye. "Here's Lisa." I swung a leg over the bike, and kick-started the engine. It growled to life, settling into a low, bubbling throb. Lisa came to hug Rosanna, and took her place on the back of my bike. Fear melange, I said. Until we meet again. Not if I see you first. We rode down the long slope to the sea, but when we stopped at a traffic signal, a black van pulled up beside us, and I turned to see the men with the hateful stares. They were arguing among themselves. I let them pull away when the signal changed. There were political stickers and religious symbols on the rear window of the van. I turned off the main road at the first corner. We rode through back streets for a while, and I worried for the changes I was seeing. Rosanna's faux bronze panels told a brutal Bombay story, but less brutal than the truth, and less brutal than the politics of faith. The violence of the past was just sand in the swash of a new wave, breaking on the island city's shores. Political thugs traveled by the truckload, brandishing clubs, and mafia gangs of 20 or 30 men had grown to hundreds of fighters. We are what we fear, and many of us in the city feared reckless days of reckoning. Chapter 4. Riding slowly, we made our way back to the sweeping curve of Marine Drive, following the necklace of reflections on the gentle waters of the bay. That first glimmer of starry sea started us talking again, and we were still talking when I pulled the bike into the driveway of our apartment building, past the salute of the watchman, and into the covered parking bay. You go up, I said to Lisa. I'm gonna wipe down the bike. Now? Now. I'll be right up. When I heard Lisa's footsteps on the marble stairs, I turned to the watchman, nodded to him, and pointed after her. Understanding that I wanted him to follow her, he set off quickly, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I heard her open the apartment door and say her good night to the watchman. I slipped quickly out through a side gate to the footpath. Moving quietly, I made my way along the line of the leafy hedge bordering the apartment building's ground floor car park. As I'd turned to enter the parking area of the building, I'd seen a huddled figure draw backwards into the shadows of the tall hedge. Someone was hiding there. I drew a knife and came up quietly to the spot near the gate where I'd seen the figure. A man stepped out in front of me, his back turned, and began to move toward the car park. It was Scorpio George. Lynn. I heard him whisper. Are you still there, Lynn? What the hell are you doing, Scorpio? I asked from behind him, and he jumped. Oh, Lynn, you scared the crap out of me. I frowned at him, wanting an explanation. The peace pact that had held since the last big mafia gang war in South Bombay was failing. Young men who hadn't fought the war, or negotiated the truce, were attacking one another in violation of rules that had been written in better men's blood. There'd been attacks by rival gangs in our area. I was vigilant, on guard all the time, and angry at myself for coming so close to hurting a friend. I've told you guys about creeping up on people, I said. See, I'm sorry, he began nervously, looking left and right. It's. Distress had a hand on his chest, and he couldn't lift it to speak. I looked for a place to talk with him. I couldn't step into the car park with Scorpio. He was a street guy, sleeping in a doorway, and his presence in the compound, if observed by a resident of the building, would lead to complaints. I had no fear of those complaints, but I knew that they'd cost the watchman his job. Taking Scorpio by the arm, I led the tall, thin Canadian across the street to a collapsed wall of crumbled stones, deep in shadow. Sitting with him in the darkness, I lit a joint and passed it to him. What's up, Scorp? It's this guy, he began, puffing deeply on the joint. This guy with the dark suit. The CIA guy. It's creeping me out, man. I can't work the street. I can't talk to tourists. It's like I see him everywhere, in my mind, asking questions about me. Did your guy, that Naveen detective guy, did he find out anything? I shook my head. One of the boys tailed him out to Bandra, but the kid ran out of taxi money and lost him. I haven't heard anything back from your guy, Naveen. I thought you might have heard something. No, nothing yet. I'm scared, Lynn, Scorpio George said, shuddering the fear along his spine. All the street boys have tested him. Nothing. He doesn't buy drugs, doesn't drink, not even beer. No girls. We'll work it out, Scorp. Don't worry. It's weird, Scorpio frowned. I'm really going out of my mind, you know? I tugged a fold of 100-rupee notes from my pocket and gave it to him. Scorpio took it in a faltering hand, but then slipped it into a pocket concealed inside his shirt. Thanks, Lynn, he said, looking up quickly to meet my eyes. I was waiting here to ask you to help me, because I haven't been on the street. The watchman told me you were still out. But then I saw you were with Lisa, and I couldn't let her see me. I didn't want to ask for money in front of her. She has a high opinion of me. We all need money sometimes. And Lisa always has a high opinion of you, whether you need money or not. He had tears in his eyes. I didn't want to see them. Listen, you and Gemini, I said, leading him across the street again, you guys lay up some supplies, buy some shit, and take a room at the Frantic. Stay there for a couple of days. We'll find out who this guy is, and we'll deal with it, okay? Okay, he said, shaking my hand with the tremble in his. You think the Frantic's pretty safe, yeah? The Frantic Hotel is the only one that'll take you and your lifestyle, Scorp. Oh, yeah? This mystery man won't get past the desk there. Not in a suit. Keep your heads down, and you'll be safe at the Frantic until we figure this out. Okay, okay. He walked away, stooping his tall frame beneath the loose fronds of the hedge. I watched him do the street guy's night walk. Slowly, nonchalantly in the pools of street light, honest Joe, nothing to hide. Then scurrying faster in the shadowed sections of the street. I slipped a 20-rupee note to the watchman, standing beside me, and climbed the marble stairs to the apartment. Lisa stood in the bathroom doorway while I showered, and I told her about Scorpio George's white-haired stalker. But who is this guy? She asked as I stepped out of the shower. What does he want with the Zodiacs? I dunno. Naveen Adair, the guy the first told you about before? He smells lawyer. He might be right. He's a smart kid. One way or another, we'll find out who this guy is. Dried off again, I flopped down on the bed beside Lisa, my head resting on the satin breeze of her breast. From that position I looked down along the length of her naked body to her feet. Rosanna likes you, she said, shifting the direction of the conversation with an elegant gesture to the left with both feet. I doubt it. Why? What happened with her? Nothing happened. Something happened when you were talking to her outside. What did you say? We just talked about Goa. Oh, no, she sighed. She's nuts about Goa, so I discovered. But she does like you. No matter what you said about Goa. I don't think so. Oh, yeah. She certainly dislikes you, too, at the same time. But she definitely likes you. What are you talking about? She was angry enough to hit you when I came out. She was? I thought we reached a good place. She was ready to hit you, so she likes you a lot. Ah, how does that work? She was angry enough to hit you, and she doesn't even know you, see? I didn't, but that wasn't unusual. Lisa had her own way of incommunicating. It's all so clear now. Was she doing her body language thing, she asked, when she was talking to you? What body language thing? She fakes a sore back, and starts rolling her hips in a circle. Did she do that? No. That's good. It is? Yeah, because it's pretty sexy, and she did it for me, and not for you. There's a logic rolling its hips in there somewhere, I'm sure, but I'm gonna let it roll past. I did manage to read Anushka's body language, however. A bear could read her body language. Lisa cut in quickly, giving me a slap on the arm. Where did you say she's performing? I laughed. I didn't, she slapped. A seashell bracelet jangled on her wrist. It was the present I'd brought for her from Goa. She played the music of the shells, twisting her wrist for a while, and then silenced them in the clutch of her free hand. Did you have a shitty time tonight? Should I be sorry I made you go, when you just got back from your trip? Not at all. I really did like your friends, and it was about time I met them. I liked Rosanna, too. She has good fire. I'm so glad. She's not just a partner. She's become close. Do you find her attractive? What? It's okay, she said, playing with the bed cover. I find her attractive, too. What? She's clever, dedicated, brave, creative, enthusiastic, and easy to get along with. She's really great. I stared along the soft coastline of Lisa's long, slender legs. What are we talking about, again? You think she's hot, she said. What? It's okay. I think she's hot, too. She took my hand and moved it between her legs. How tired are you? She asked. I looked down at her toes, bent backwards in a fan-shaped arch. Nobody's ever that tired. It was good. It was always good. We shared a loving kindness that was a kind of loving. And maybe because we both knew that it would end someday, some way, we let our bodies say things that our hearts couldn't. I went to the kitchen to fetch a cold drink of water, and brought a glass back for her, putting it on the table on her side of the bed. For a while I looked at her, beautiful, healthy, strong, curled into herself like a sleeping cat. I tried to imagine what the vision of love she was clinging to might look like, and how different it was from my own. I lay down beside her and gathered my body into the contours of her dream. Her toes closed reflexively over mine in her sleep. And more honest than my mind, my sleeping body bent at the knees, pressed against the closed door of her curved back, and beat on it with the fist of my heart, begging to be loved. Chapter 5. Riding a motorcycle is velocity as poetry. The fine balance between elegant agility and fatal fall is a kind of truth, and like all truth, it carries a heartbeat with it into the sky. Eternal moments in the saddle escape the stuttering flow of time, and space, and purpose. Coursing on those wheels, on that river of air, in that flight of freed spirit, there's no attachment, no fear, no joy, no hatred, no love, and no malice. The nearest thing, for some violent men, for this violent man, to a state of grace. I arrived at the passport factory used by the Sanjay Company in a good mood. I'd taken the slow way to work that morning, and the ride had cleared my mind, leaving me with a placid smile I could feel in my whole body. The factory was the main center where we changed and created false passports. As the principal forger and counterfeiter of passports and other identification documents for the Sanjay Company, I spent at least some hours of most days at the factory. I opened the door, and my motorcycle smile froze. There was a young stranger in front of me. He put out his hand in greeting. "Lin," he said, shaking my hand as if he was pumping water from a village well. "My name's Farzad. Come on in." I took off my sunglasses, accepted his invitation to my office, and found that a second desk had been lodged in a corner of the large room. The desk was piled high with papers and drawings. "They put me here about 2 weeks ago," Farzad said, nodding toward his desk. "I hope you don't mind." "That depends." "Depends on what?" "On who the hell you are, and what the hell you're doing in my office." "Oh," he laughed, relaxing enough to take a seat at the new desk. "That's easy. I'm your new assistant. Count on it." "I didn't ask for a new assistant. I liked the old assistant." "But I thought you didn't have an assistant?" "Exactly." His hands flapped in his lap like fish flung on the shore. I stepped across the room to look through the long windows into the factory below. I noticed that changes had taken place there as well. What the hell? I walked down the wooden steps leading to the factory floor, and headed toward the new desks and lightboxes. Farzad followed me, speaking quickly. They decided to expand the false document section to include education stuff. "I thought you knew." "What education stuff?" "Diplomas, degrees, certificates of competency and the like. That's why they brought me in." He stopped suddenly, watching me as I picked up a document from one of the new desks. It was a master's degree in engineering, purporting to be issued by a prestigious university in Bengal. It bore the name of a young man I knew, the son of a mafia enforcer from the fishing fleet area, who was as slow-witted as he was avaricious, and who was, by any reckoning, the greediest kid gangster in Sassoon Dock. "They brought me in?" Farzad concluded falteringly, "BB, because I have an MBA. I mean, a real one." "Count on it. There goes the neighborhood. Doesn't anybody study philosophy anymore?" "My dad does," he said. "He's a Steiner utilitarian. Please, whoever you are, I haven't had a chai yet." Moving to a second table, I picked up another false qualification document. It was a Bachelor of Medicine in Dental Surgery. Reading my features, Farzad spoke again. "You know, it's okay. None of these fake degrees will ever be used in India. They're all for people who want jobs in foreign countries." "Oh," I said, not smiling, "that makes it okay, then." "Exactly." He grinned happily. "Shall I send for tea?" When the chai arrived, in short, crack-veined glasses, we sipped and talked long enough for me to like him. Farzad was from the small, brilliant and influential Parsi community. He was 23 years old, unmarried, and lived with his parents and extended family in a large house not far from the Bombay slum where I'd once lived. After 2 postgraduate years in the United States, he started work at a futures trading firm in Boston. Within the first year, he'd become entangled in a complex Ponzi scheme run by the head of his firm. Although he'd played no direct part in his employer's criminal intrigue, Farzad's name appeared in transfers of funds to secret bank accounts. When it seemed that he might be arrested, he'd return to India, using the fortuitous if unhappy excuse that he had to visit the sick bed of his dying uncle. I'd known the uncle, Keki, very well. He'd been a wise counselor to Kotterbai, the South Bombay Don, and had a place on the Mafia Council. In his last hours, the Parsi counselor had asked the new head of the Mafia company, Sanjay Kumar, to protect young Farzad, his nephew, whom he regarded as a son. Sanjay took Farzad in, telling him that he'd be safe from prosecution in the United States if he remained in Bombay and worked for the Mafia company. While I'd been in Goa, Sanjay had put him to work in my false passport factory. "There's so many people moving out of India now," Farzad said, sipping his second chai. "And regulations will lighten up. You'll see. Count on it. Restrictions and laws, they'll all change, they'll all get looser and easier. People will be leaving India, people will be coming back to India, starting businesses here and in foreign countries, moving money around all over the place. And all of those people, one way or another, they're all going to need or want some paperwork that gives them a better chance in America, or London, or Stockholm, or Sydney, you know. It's a big market, huh? It's a huge market. Huge. We only set this up 2 weeks ago, and we're already working 2 full shifts to meet our commitments." 2 shifts, huh? Flat out, Baba. And, when one of our clients, who buys his engineering degree instead of studying for it, is called upon to build a bridge, say, that won't fall down and kill a couple hundred people? "No tension, Baba," he replied. "In most countries, the fake degree only gets you in the door. After that, you have to do more study to meet the local standards and get accreditation. And you know our Indian people. If you let them in the door, they'll buy the house, and then the house next door, and then in no time they'll own the street, and start renting houses to the people who used to own them. It's the way we are. Count on it, Yar." Farzad was a gentle, open-faced young man. Relaxed with me at last and unafraid, his soft brown eyes stared from a place of unruffled serenity, deep within his sanguine opinion of the world. His round, full lips parted slightly on the permanent quiver of a smile. His skin was very fair, fairer than my tanned face beneath my short blonde hair. His western chic jeans and silk designer shirt gave him the look of a visitor, a tourist, rather than someone whose family had lived in Bombay for 300 years. His face was unmarked, his skin showing no scar or scratch or faded bruise. It occurred to me, as I listened to his genial chatter, that it was likely he'd never been in a fight, or even closed his fist in anger. I envied him. When I allowed myself to look into the half-collapsed tunnel of the past, it seemed that I'd been fighting all my life. My kid brother and I were the only Catholic boys in our tough, working-class neighborhood. Some of our tough, working-class neighbors waited patiently for the arrival of our school bus every evening, and fought us all the way home, day after day. And it never stopped. A trip to the shopping center was like crossing a green line into enemy territory. Local militias, or street gangs, attacked outsiders with the viciousness that the poor only ever visit on the poor. Learning karate and joining the local boxing club were the life skills classes in my neighborhood. Every kid who had the heart to fight learned a martial art, and every week gave him several opportunities to practice what he learned. The accident and emergency department of the local hospital was filled, on Friday and Saturday nights, with young men who were having stitches put into cuts on their mouths and eyes, or having their broken noses repaired for the 3rd time. I was one of them. My medical file at the local hospital was heavier than a volume of Shakespeare's tragedies. And that was before prison. Listening to Farzad's happy, dreaming talk of the car he was saving to buy, and the girl he wanted to ask out, I could feel the pressure of the 2 long knives I always carried at my back. In the secret drawer of a cabinet in my apartment there were 2 handguns and 200 rounds of ammunition. If Farzad didn't have a weapon, and the willingness to use it, he was in the wrong business. If he didn't know how to fight, and what it feels like to lose a fight, he was in the wrong business. "You're lining up with the Sanjay company," I said. "Don't plan too far ahead." 2 years, Farzad said, cupping his hands in front of him as though he was holding the chunk of time and its promises. 2 years of this work, and then I'll take all the money I've saved, and open a small business of my own. A consultancy, for people trying to get a green card in the US, and whatnot. It's the coming thing. Count on it. Just keep your head down, I advised, hoping that fate or the company would give him the years he wanted. Oh, sure, I always. The phone on my desk rang, cutting him off. Aren't you going to answer it? Farzad asked, after a few rings. I don't like telephones. The telephone was still ringing. Well, why do you have one? I don't. The office does. If it agitates you so much, you answer it. He lifted the receiver. Good morning, Farzad speaking, he said, then held the phone away from his ear. Gurgling sounds, like mud complaining or big dogs eating something, rumbled from the phone. Farzad stared at it in horror. It's for me, I said, and he let the phone fall into my hand. Salam alaikum, Nazir. Lin Baba? It was a voice I could feel through the floor. Salam alaikum, Nazir. Wa alaikum salam. You come, Nazir commanded. You come now. Whatever happened to how are you, Lin Baba? You come, Nazir insisted. His voice was a growling thing dragging a body on a gravel driveway. I loved it. Okay. Keep your scowl on. I'm on my way. I put down the phone, collected my wallet and the keys to my bike, and walked to the door. We'll talk more later on, I said, turning to look at my new assistant. But for now, I think this is gonna work out okay, between you and me. Watch the store while I'm gone, Thick? The word, pronounced Teak, brought a wide smile to the young, unblemished face. Bilkul Thick, he replied. Absolutely okay. I left the office, forgetting the young MBA making false degrees, and pushed the bike to speed on Marine Drive, sweeping up onto the narrow cutting beside the metro flyover. At the Parsi Fire Temple corner I saw my friend Abdullah riding with two others across the intersection in front of me. They were headed for the narrow streets of the Commerce District. Waiting for a break in the almost constant flow of vehicles, and checking to see that the traffic cop on duty was busy accepting a bribe from someone else, I cut the red light and set off in pursuit of my friend. As a member of the Sanjay Company, I'd pledged my life to defend others in the gang, the band of brothers in arms. Abdullah was more than that. The tall, long-haired Iranian was my first and closest friend in the company. My commitment to him was beyond the duty of the pledge. There's a deep connection between gangsters, faith and death. All of the men in the Sanjay Company felt that their souls were in the hands of a personal god, and they were all devout enough to pray before and after a murder. Abdullah, no less than the others, was a man of faith, although he never showed mercy. For my part, I still searched for something more than the verses, vows and veneration I'd found in the books of believers. And while I doubted everything in myself, Abdullah was always and ever certain, as confident in his invincibility as the strongest eagle, soaring above his head in the hovering Bombay sky. We were different men, with different ways to love and different instincts for the fight. But friendship is faith, too, especially for those of us who don't believe in much else. And the simple truth was that my heart always rose, always soared in the little sky inside, whenever I saw him. I followed him in the flow of traffic, waiting for the chance to pull in beside him. His straight back and relaxed command of the bike were characteristics I'd come to admire. Some men and women ride a horse as if they're born to it, and something of the same instinct applies to riding a motorcycle. The two men riding with Abdullah, Fardeen and Hussein, were good riders who'd been on bikes since they were infants, riding on the tanks of their father's bikes, through the same traffic on the same streets, but they never achieved the same riverine facility as our Iranian friend, and never looked as cool. Just as I sensed a gap opening beside his bike, and pulled forward to match his pace, he turned his head to look at me. A smile edged serious shadows from his face, and he pulled over to the curb, followed by Fardeen and Hussein. I stopped close to him, and we hugged, still sitting on our bikes. Salam alaikum, he greeted me warmly. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And unto you be peace, and Allah's mercy, and his blessings. Fardeen and Hussein reached out to shake hands. You were going to the meeting, I heard, Abdullah said. Yeah, I got the call from Nazir. I thought you'd be there. I am indeed going there, he declared. Well, you're taking the long way, I laughed, because he was heading in the wrong direction. I have a job to do first. It will not take long. Come with us. It is not far from here, and I believe that you do not know this place and these people. Okay, I agreed. Where are we going? To see the cycle killers, he said. On a matter of company business. I'd never visited the den of the cycle killers. I didn't know much about them. But like every street guy in Bombay, I knew the names of their top 2 killers, and I knew that they outnumbered the 4 of us by 6 or 7 to 1. Abdullah kicked his bike to life, waiting for us to kickstart our own bikes, and then led the way out into the brawl of traffic, his back straight, and his head high and proud. Chapter 6. I'd seen some of the cycle killers, riding their polished chrome bicycles at suicidal speed through the market streets of the Thieves' Bazaar. They were young, and always dressed in the same uniform of brightly colored, tight-fitting undershirts, known as banyans, white stovepipe jeans, and the latest fashion brand of running shoes. They all slicked their hair back with perfumed oil, wore ostentatious caste-mark tattoos on their faces to protect them against the evil eye, and covered their own eyes with identical mirror-finish aviator sunglasses, as polished as their silver bicycles. They were, by general agreement among discriminating criminals, the most efficient knife men money could buy, surpassed in skill by only one man in the city, Hathoda, the knife master for the Sanjay Company. Deep within the streets and narrower gullies, clogged with commerce and the clamor for cash, we parked our bikes outside a shop that sold Ayurvedic remedies and silk pouches filled with secret herbs, offering protection against love curses. I wanted to buy one, but Abdullah didn't let me. "A man's protection is in Allah, honor and duty," he growled, his arm around my shoulder. "Not in amulets and herbs." I made a mental note to go back to the shop, alone, and fell into step with my stern friend. We entered a shoulder-wide lane, and as the lane darkened, further from the street, Abdullah led us beneath an almost invisible arch bearing the name Bella Vista Towers. Beyond the arch we found a network of covered lanes that seemed, at one point, to pass through the middle of a private home. The owner of the home, an elderly man wearing a tattered banyan and sitting in an easy chair, was reading a newspaper through over large optical sunglasses. He didn't look up or acknowledge us as we passed through what seemed to be his living room. We walked on into an even darker lane, turned the last corner in the maze and emerged in a wide, open, sunlit courtyard. I'd heard of it before. It was called Das Rasta, or 10 Ways. Residential buildings and the many lanes that serviced them surrounded the roughly circular courtyard, open to the sky. It was a private public square. Residents leaned from windows, looking down into the action of Das Rasta. Some lowered or pulled up baskets of vegetables, cooked food, and other goods. Many more people entered and left the courtyard through wheel-spoke alleys leading to the wider world beyond. In the center of the courtyard, sacks of grain and pulses had been heaped together in a pile twice the height of a man. The sacks formed a small pyramid of thrones, and seated on them at various levels were the cycle killers. In the topmost improvised throne was Ishmeet, the leader. His long hair had never been cut, according to Sikh religious tradition, but his observance of Sikhism stopped there. His hair wasn't held in a neat turban, but fell freely to his narrow waist. His thin, bare arms were covered in tattoos, depicting his many murders and gang war victories. There were 2 long, curved knives in decorated scabbards tucked into the belt of his tight jeans. "Salam alaikum," he said lazily, greeting Abdullah as we approached his tower of thrones. "Wa alaikum salam," Abdullah replied. "Who's the dog face you've got with you?" A man sitting close to Ishmeet asked in Hindi, turning his head to spit noisily. "His name is Lin," Abdullah replied calmly. "They also call him Shantaram. He was with Kaderbai, and he speaks Hindi." "I don't care if he speaks Hindi, Punjabi and Malayalam," the man responded in Hindi, glaring at me. "I don't care if he can recite poetry, and if he has a dictionary shoved up his ass. I want to know what this dogface is doing here. I'm guessing you have more experience with dogs than I do," I said in Hindi. "But I came here in the company of men, not dogs, who know how to show respect." The man flinched and twitched, shaking his head in disbelief. I wasn't sure if it was because of the challenge I'd thrown, or the fact that a white foreigner had spoken it in the kind of Hindi used by street gangsters. "This man is also my brother," Abdullah said evenly, staring at Ishmeet. "And what your man says to him, he says to me." "Then why don't I say it to you, Iranian?" the man said. "Why don't you, by Allah?" Abdullah replied. There was a moment of exquisite calm. Men working to bring sacks of grain, pots of water, boxes of cold drinks, bags of spices and other goods still moved into and out of the courtyard. People still watched from their windows. Children still laughed and played in the shade. But in the breathing space between the cycle killers and the four of us, a meditation stillness rippled outwards from our beating hearts. It was the deliberate stillness of not reaching for our weapons, the shadow before the flash of sunlight and blood. The cycle killers were only a word away from war, but they respected and feared Abdullah. I looked into Ishmeet's smiling eyes, schemed into slits. He was counting the corpses that would lie around his throne of sacks. There was no doubt that Abdullah would kill at least 3 of Ishmeet's men, and that the rest of us might account for as many again. And although there were 12 cycle killers in the courtyard, and several more in the rooms beyond, and although Ishmeet himself might manage to live, the loss would be too great for his gang to survive a revenge attack by our gang. Ishmeet's eyes opened a little wider, crimson beetle nut staining his smile. Any brother of Abdullah, he said, staring directly at me, is a brother of mine. Come, sit up here with me. We'll drink bang together. I glanced at Abdullah, who nodded to me without taking his eyes off the cycle killers. I climbed onto the wide throne of sacks and took a seat a little below Ishmeet, and level with the man who'd insulted me. Raja, Ishmeet said, calling to a man who was polishing the rows of already gleaming bicycles. Get some chairs. The man moved quickly to provide wooden stools for Abdullah, Fardeen, and Hussein. Others brought the pale green bang in tall glasses, and also a large chillum. I drank the glass of marijuana milk down in gulps, as did Ishmeet. Belching loudly, he winked at me. Buffalo milk, he said. Fresh pulled. Gives a little extra kick. You want to be a king in this world, man, keep your own milking buffalo. Okay. He lit the chillum, took 2 long puffs, and passed it to me, smoke streaming from his nostrils like steam escaping from fissured stone. I smoked and passed the chillum to the gang lieutenant sitting beside me. The animosity of moments before was gone from his smiling eyes. He smoked, passed the chillum along, and then tapped me on the knee. Who's your favorite heroine? From now, or before? From now. Charisma Kapoor. And from before? Smita Patil. What about you? Rekha, he sighed. Before and now and always. She's the queen of everything. Do you have a knife? Of course. Can I see it, please? I took one of my knives out of its scabbard, and passed it to him. He opened the flick mechanism expertly, and then flipped the long, heavy, brass-handled weapon around his fingers as if it was a flower on a stem. Nice knife, he said, closing it and handing it back to me. Who made it? Vikrant, in Sassoon Dock, I answered, putting the knife away. Ah, Vikrant. Good work. You want to see my knife? Sure, I replied, reaching out to take the weapon he offered me. My long switchblade knife was made for street fighting. The cycle killer's knife was designed to leave a deep, wide hole, usually in the back. The blade tapered quickly from the wide hilt to the tip. Gouged into the blade were trenches to facilitate the flow of blood. Backward serrations entered a body on the smooth side but ripped the flesh on the outward pull, preventing the wound from spontaneously closing. The hilt was a brass semicircle, designed to fit into a closed fist. The knife was used in a punching action, rather than a slash or jab. You know, I said, as I handed back the weapon, I hope we never, ever fight each other. He grinned widely, putting the knife back into its scabbard. Good plan, he said. No problem. You and me, we never fight. Okay? He offered me his hand. I hesitated a moment, because gangsters take stuff like that seriously, and I wasn't sure that I could promise not to fight him if our gangs became enemies. What the hell, I said, slapping my palm into his, and closing my fingers in a firm handshake. We never fight, no matter what. He grinned at me again. He began in Hindi. I'm sorry about that comment before. It's okay. Actually, I like dogs, he said. Anyone here will tell you that. I even feed the stray dogs here. It's okay. Ajay. Tell him how much I like dogs. Very much, Ajay said. He loves dogs. If you don't stop talking about dogs right now, Ishmeet said through the sliver of a smile, I'm going to kick you in the neck. Ishmeet turned away from his man, displeasure a crown pressed on his forehead. Abdullah, he said, you want to talk to me, I think so? Abdullah was about to reply when a crew of 10 workingmen entered the courtyard, pulling 2 long, empty handcarts. Make way, they shouted. Work is close to God. Working men are doing God's work. We are here for the sacks. Old sacks going out, new sacks coming in. Make way. Work is close to God. With a disregard that might have cost other men their lives, the workers ignored the status and comfort of the murderous gang and began pulling sacks from the improvised throne. Deadly cycle killers tumbled and stumbled from their places on the pile. As quickly as his dignity would allow, Ishmeet scrambled off his vantage point to stand close to Abdullah while the demolition continued. I climbed down with him to join my friends. Fardeen, nicknamed the politician, stood at once and offered his wooden stool to Ishmeet. The leader of the cycle killers accepted, sat beside Abdullah, and called importantly for hot chai. While we waited for the tea, the workers removed the tall hill of sacks, leaving only scattered grains and straws on the bare stones of the courtyard. We sipped Adrak chai, spicy ginger tea strong enough to bring tears to the eyes of someone judging judges. The workers brought fresh sacks into the open ground. Within minutes a new mound began to appear, and men who worked for the cycle killers began to shape it into a series of throne-like seats once more. Perhaps to cover the embarrassment of having his estrade so abruptly dismantled, Ishmeet turned his attention to me. You, foreigner, he asked, what do you think of Das Rasta? Gee, I said, using the respectful term equivalent to sir, I was wondering how we were able to come in here without a challenge. We knew you were coming, Ishmeet replied smugly, and we knew you were friends, and how many you were. Dilip uncle, the old man reading the newspaper, do you remember him? Yeah, we passed right through his house. Exactly. Dilip uncle, he has a button on the floor under his chair. The button rings a bell here in the courtyard. From the number of times he presses the button, and for how long, we can tell who is coming, friend or stranger, and how many. And there are many uncles like Dilip, who are the eyes and the ears of Das Rasta. Not bad, I allowed. Your frown is another question, I think. I was also wondering why this is called Das Rasta, 10 ways, when I can count only 9 ways in and out. I like you, Gora, Ishmeet said, using the word that meant white man. Not many have noticed that fact. There are, in truth, 10 ways into and out of this place, which is the reason for the name. But one of them is hidden, and only known to those of us who live here. The only way that you could pass through that exit is to become one of us, or be killed by us. Abdullah chose the moment to reveal his purpose. I have your money, he said, leaning in toward Ishmeet's well-oiled smile. But there is a matter I must make clear, before I give it to you. What matter? A witness, Abdullah said, speaking in a tone that was loud enough for me to hear. You have a reputation for being so fast, in your work, that even the jinn cannot see your blade strike. But in this assignment we gave to you, someone was allowed to see the deed. Someone who made a clear description of your men to the police. Ishmeet locked his jaw shut, glanced around quickly at his men, and then looked back at Abdullah. The smile returned slowly, but the teeth were still locked together as if they were holding a knife. We will, of course, kill this witness, he hissed. And at no extra charge. No need for that, Abdullah replied. The sergeant who took the statement is one of ours. He thrashed the witness, and convinced him to change his story. But you understand that with a matter such as this, I must speak of it in the name of Sanjay himself. Especially since it is only the second assignment we have given to you. Juror, Ishmeet hissed again. Certainly, and I can assure you that you will never have to raise the question of witnesses again, for so long as we do business together. Ishmeet took Abdullah's hand in his, held it for a moment, then stood, turned his back, and began to clamber to the top of his new throne of sacks. As he settled himself at the top of the pile once more, he spoke one word. Pankaj, he said, speaking to the cycle killer who'd been sitting with me. Fardeen took a package of money from his backpack. He passed it to Abdullah, who handed it on to Pankaj. As the cycle killer turned to climb up the pile of sacks he hesitated, and swung his gaze around to face me. You and me, we never fight, he grinned, offering his hand once more. Pukka, correct? His wide smile and obvious, innocent pleasure in a new friendship would have been derided as naive by the gangsters and outlaws I'd come to know in the Australian prison. But we were in Bombay, and Pankaj's smile was as sincere as his willingness to fight me had been only minutes before, as sincere as mine. Until I'd heard Ishmeet use his name, I hadn't realized that the man I'd traded insults with was the second in command of the Cycle Killers, and as feared a knife man as Ishmeet himself. "You and me," I said in Hindi, "we never fight. No matter what." His wicked grin widened, and he scampered athletically up the pile of sacks to give the package to Ishmeet. Abdullah raised his hand to his chest in farewell. We followed Abdullah out through the labyrinth of lanes, through the living room where Dilip uncle still sat, reading his newspaper, his foot hovering close to the button set into the floor, and then out into the street. As we kicked the bikes to life, Abdullah caught my eye. When I met his gaze, his face opened in a rare, wide smile of happiness and exhilaration. "That was close," he said. "Shukran Allah. Since when did you start subcontracting?" "2 weeks ago, while you were in Goa," he replied. "The lawyer we hired, who betrayed our men to the police, and told them everything he had said in private?" I nodded, recalling the anger we'd felt at the life sentence the company men had received, based on their own lawyer's treacherous information. An appeal of the conviction was pending in the courts, but our men were still in prison. "That lawyer has joined the long line of his fellows in hell," Abdullah said, his golden eyes gleaming. "And there will be no appeal of his sentence. But let us not disturb our peace with talk of dishonor. Let us enjoy the ride, and be grateful that, today, Allah has spared us the necessity to kill the killers we paid to kill for us. It is a great and wonderful thing to be alive, alhamdulillah. By the grace of God." But as Fardeen, Hussein and I fell in behind Abdullah for the ride back to the Sanjay Council meeting, it wasn't God's grace that I was thinking about. Other mafia companies hired the Cycle Killers from time to time. Even the cops put them on cleanup duty now and then. But Qadarbhai, who'd founded the mafia group, had always refused. Anywhere humans gather, from boardrooms to bordellos, they seek and agree upon a moral standard for themselves. And one standard, upheld by Qadarbhai, was that if a man had to be killed, he was given the chance to look into the eyes of the men who claimed that right. Hiring assassins, rather than being assassins, was a change too far for some, I was sure. It was a change too far for me. Order and chaos were dancing on a slender blade, held by the outstretched arm of conscience. Subcontracting the Cycle Killers tilted the blade. At least half the men in the company were more loyal to the code than to Sanjay, the leader who was changing it. The first glimpse of the sea on Marine Drive filled my heart, if not my head. I turned away from the red shadow. I stopped thinking of that pyramid of killers and Sanjay's improvidence. I stopped thinking about my own part in the madness. And I rode, with my friends, into the end of everything. Chapter 7. If Abdullah hadn't been with us, Fardeen, Hussein and I would have raced one another to the council meeting, cutting between the cars and overtaking all the way to the Nabila Mosque. But Abdullah never raced or cut between the cars. He expected the cars to make way for him, and for the most part, they did. He rode slowly, his back straight, head held high, his long, black hair fluttering at his wide shoulders. We reached the mansion in some 20 minutes, and parked our bikes in places reserved for us outside a perfume shop. The entrance to the mansion was usually open to the street and unguarded. Qadarbhai believed that if an enemy had a death wish strong enough to make him attack the mansion, he would prefer to drink tea with him, before killing him. But as we approached, we found the high, heavy street door of the mansion closed, and 4 armed men on duty. I knew one of them, Farooq, who operated a company gambling outpost in the distant town of Aurangabad. The others were Afghan strangers. We pushed open the door and found 2 more men inside, carrying assault rifles. "Afghans?" I said, when we'd passed them. "So many things have happened, Lin brother, since you have been in Goa," Abdullah replied as we entered the open courtyard at the center of the mansion complex. No kidding. I hadn't visited the mansion in months, and I saw with regret how neglected the paved courtyard had become. In Qadarbhai's time there was a constant fountain drenching the huge boulder in the pond at the courtyard's center. Lush potted palms and flower boxes had once provided splashes of color in the white and sky blue space. They'd long since died, and the dry earth that remained was covered with a sprinkling of cigarette butts. At the door of the council meeting room there were 2 more Afghans armed with assault rifles. One of them tapped at the closed door, and then opened it slowly. Abdullah, Hussein and I entered, while Fardeen waited outside with the guards. When the door closed, there were 13 of us in the long room. The meeting room had changed. The floor was still tiled in cream pentagonal tiles, and the walls and vaulted ceilings still bore the mosaic pattern of a blue-white clouded sky. But the low inlaid table and plump brocade floor cushions were gone. A dark boardroom table ran almost the length of the room, swarmed by 14 high-backed leather executive chairs. At the far end of the table was a more ornate chairman's seat. The man sitting in that chair, Sanjay Kumar, looked up with a smile as we entered. It wasn't for me. Abdullah, Hussein, he called out. We've gone through all the small stuff already. Now you're here, we can finally deal with some real trouble. I assumed that Sanjay would want me to wait outside until the meeting was over, and tried to excuse myself. Sanjay bhai, I said, I'll wait in the courtyard until you need me. No, Lin, he said, waving his hand vaguely. Go sit down with Tariq. Come on, the rest of you, let's get started. Tariq, Qadr Bhai's 14-year-old nephew and only male relative, sat in his uncle's emperor chair at the end of the room. He was growing fast, already almost as tall as any man in the room. But still he seemed small and frail in that winged chair, once a throne for the king of South Bombay crime. Behind Tariq was Nazir, his hand resting on the handle of a dagger, the boy's protector and my close friend. I moved past the long table to greet Tariq. The boy brightened for a moment when I shook his hand, but quickly assumed the cold, impassive stare that had hardened the bronze of his eyes since the death of his uncle. When I looked at Nazir, the older man gave me a rare smile. It was a grimace that could tame lions, and one of the favorite smiles of my life. I took a seat beside Tariq. Abdullah and Hussein took their places, and the meeting recommenced. For a while, Sanjay directed the discussions through business matters. Trouble with striking workers at the Ballard Pier dockside had slowed the supply of drugs into South Bombay. Some fishermen at Sassoon Dock, anchorage of the biggest fishing fleet in the island city, had formed an association and were resisting the payment of protection money, and a friendly city councillor had been caught by a police raid on one of the company's prostitution dens, requiring a favor from the Mafia Council to hush the matter up and save the man's career. The Mafia Council, which had carefully set up the raid to force the city councillor deeper into its embrace, authorized the sums required to bribe the police, and determined that twice the amount should be charged to the councillor in question for doing him the favor. The final matter was something more complicated and went beyond business. The Sanjay Company and the council that ordered its affairs ran the whole of South Bombay, an area that stretched from Flora Fountain to the Navy Nagar near the very southern promontory of the island city, and included everything in between, from sea to sea. The Sanjay Company was the sole black market authority in the area, but wasn't generally despised. In fact, a lot of people took their disputes and grievances to the company, in those years, rather than the police. The mafia was usually quicker, often more just, and always cheaper than the cops. When Sanjay took the leadership, he called the group a company, joining a gangster trend that divided the city along business lines. Qadr Bhai, the dead Khan who'd founded it, was strong enough for the mafia clan to have no other name but his own. Echoes of Qadr Bhai's name gave the Sanjay Company an authority that Sanjay's name didn't, and still held the peace. Occasionally, however, someone decided to take matters into his own hands. One such rogue element was an ambitious landlord in the Cuff Parade area, where tall, expensive apartment buildings stood on land reclaimed from the sea. He'd begun hiring his own thugs. The Sanjay Company didn't like it, because the company had the reputation of its own thugs to consider. The private goons had thrown a rent defaulter from the window of a second-story apartment. The tenant survived the fall, but his body landed on a cigarette and hashish shop owned by the company, injuring the operator, known as Shining Patel, and a popular customer who was a renowned singer of Sufi songs. Shining Patel and his black-white market shop was just business for the Sanjay Company. The injury to a great singer, loved by every hash smoker in the southern peninsula, made the offense personal. I told you this would happen, Sanjay Bhai, a man named Faisal said, clenching a fist on the table. I've been warning you about this kind of thing for months. You warned me that someone would fall on Shining Patel's shop? Sanjay sneered. I must have missed that meeting. I warned you that respect was slipping, Faisal said, more quietly. I warned you that discipline was slipping. Nobody's afraid of us, and I don't blame them. If we're so scared that we put mercenaries on the door, we're the ones to blame. He's right, little Tony added. This problem with the Scorpion Company, for example. That's what gives Chutias like this landlord Bahanchud the idea that he can go past us, to create his own little army. It's not a company, Sanjay spat back at them. Those Scorpion fucks haven't been recognized, not by any of the other companies in Bombay. It's a gang. They're just North Bombay guys, trying to squeeze into the South. Call it what it is, man, a cheap little gang. Call it what you will, Mahmood Melbaf said softly, it is still a problem. They have attacked our men in the street. Not a kilometer from here, 2 of our best earners were hacked with choppers in the middle of the day. That's right,